Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second part of this AdSense on Air series, formerly known as the product DoubleClick for Publishers, or also known as DFP. Has now undergone a rebrand in the meantime since our last parts of this series, and is now called Google Ad Manager. So we're going to try to use Google Ad Manager instead of DFP or DoubleClick for Publishers for the duration of this time. My name's Killian Jenkinson. I'm a platform and programmatic specialist based here in Dublin, but operate in many of the European, Middle East and African markets. I'm joined here today by my colleague Clément.
Yeah, hi, my name is Clément Vareille. I'm a strategic partner manager. So I help our biggest publishers on the French market specifically to grow their revenue.
Excellent. Okay, guys. So first of all, as you know, this AdSense on Air series is a registration-driven series. So please sign up at g.co/AdSense on Air in order to understand when the next upcoming events are going to go. And to understand the calendar that we have in place for you. Of course, if you have any questions, please register at g.co/AdSense question. Ask your questions there, specifically related to this topic, and we'll get back to you at the end of this presentation. We're going to be answering those questions for you live in real time. As we say in Google, feedback is a gift. So please do feel free to give us your opinion. And in fact, filling out the feedback form at the end of this session is a prerequisite to getting a hold of this lovely deck that we've created for you. Okay, so that's all the prelims. So on to what we have in store for you today. We've got an agenda mainly focusing on 3 points. First of all, we're going to recap on our last session where we took you through the basics of DFP, or as it's called now, Google Ad Manager. Then we'll be quickly fast forwarding to looking at the trafficking section and how you traffic campaigns and orders and line items within DFP. And then finally, Clément, who's an expert in this area, will be focusing on your yield management and giving you some of the basic principles there so you can go forward and make as much money as possible using Google Ad Manager. Well, that's all ahead of us. What have we got in store now? Quick recap on where we've come from. Okay, so what we spoke to you in the last AdSense on Air live stream was the basic principles that you can implement when you first get an account. And then we talked about the 3 pillars that fundamentally underpin any good DFP account structure. So the one we focused on primarily in the last event was your inventory structure. And we were trying to get the basic shell of your inventory correct so that your setup was good and robust and future-proofed for the 2 other main components of the DFP account in the form of tagging and, of course, trafficking. So today's session is going to focus on trafficking. But before we go directly into that, we're going to have more of a recap on what we covered the last time. So, as you might remember, for those of you who tuned into the last series, and for those of you who have not, we would definitely recommend that you go back and watch the last episode. What we recommend is that your inventory structure is primarily driven by your direct sales. Direct sales is the most fundamental reason why you should set up your inventory structure and how you should structure and form it within your Google Ad Manager account. The other 2 pillars that underpin inventory structure are, of course, trafficking and reporting. Ad unit structure is primarily built on these 3 pillars. And it's for that reason that you should take a lot of time in preparing your inventory structure so that you can support these 3 functions to the best possible effect. So then, of course, the considerations that you need to take into account when setting up your inventory structure is, do you have one property? That could be a site or an app. Or do you have multiple properties, multiple sites, multiple apps, or a mixture of apps and sites? Your direct sales, how do you sell? Do you sell by position, or do you sell purely by section? Or do you sell by a mixture of both? And then the interrelationship between those 2, whether you sell by position or whether you sell by section, will determine whether you use ad units or key values or both at the same time in order to achieve this end. As I say again, our last live stream, which was done by myself and Olivia Lavin, is available. So please do sign up in order to get access to it. And please do watch it in conjunction with this one. So let's just have a quick recap in the user interface so that we know where we're going. So in the last section, we covered mainly the inventory section here, located on the left-hand sidebar. And we went into our ad units. And we were telling you how you could set up your ad units. So here's a couple that we've already populated. So if we go into entertainment, for example, and maybe our film and reviews. Okay, so if we scroll down, the really important thing to understand when you're working with AdSense and Google Ad Manager, formerly known as DFP, is that you want to make sure your AdSense inventory setting is clicked to enable. And this is a really important point that I can't stress enough. AdSense, unlike other properties that could be integrated with Google Ad Manager, is primarily ad unit driven. So if this was set to disabled and you were to have this ad unit included on a network level, then it would not show. So it's really important that you have all your ad units enabled for AdSense so that they can show properly when we show you the correct setup later. Okay. So that was a brief recap of where our inventory lives and what we need to do in terms of having our inventory future prepped for integration with Google Ad Manager. So on the next slide here, we're going to talk about our new topics, and that's trafficking. Okay, so today we're going to be covering the basics before I pass you over to Clément, who's going to be going into more detail. So you might be asking yourself, in Google Ad Manager, formerly known as DFP, what is an order? What is a line item? What is a creative? What is a format? And these are good questions to ask, so we're going to find out exactly what they are over the course of the next few minutes. So fundamentally, an order represents an advertiser within Google Ad Manager. You can have multiple different orders or multiple different advertisers. Take, for example, Nike, Puma, Adidas, and so on and so forth. Then the line item details all the different details the minutiae of the detail within each individual order. So maybe for Nike, for example, you're running a Christmas campaign. Maybe you're running a summer campaign. Maybe you're running a campaign for new tennis sneakers. Maybe you're running a campaign directly targeted at women or targeted at men. And then at the end, what serves as a creative. So most of you are probably most commonly familiar with an image creative, could be a HTML5 image, or those of you who are familiar with AdSense would know that creatives come in different shapes and sizes, like link or text ads. So I think the best way to kind of encapsulate this idea is to think of a metaphor that you and a group of your friends decide to go out to eat together, and you go to a restaurant. Within a restaurant, you sit at a table, and each of the friends around the table represents a different order or a different advertiser in this case. So each person at the table is going to make their own decision on what they want to eat. So one of your friends might order a burger, another friend might order a pizza, another friend might order a lasagna. And then the actual finished product is exactly what they ordered. So much in the same way, when you sit at a table, each one of your friends represents a different order or a different advertiser. The decision they make and the command they make in terms of what they want to eat is like a line item. It details the different specifics within that order. And then the final finished product or polished product is, of course, the creative, or in the case of your friends, it's whatever they ordered, be it lasagna, be it pizza, or be it a burger. Okay, so now we're going to see exactly what we mean conceptually within Google Ad Manager. So our orders live under the delivery tab on the left-hand side. And as you can see here, we've got numerous different orders. We've got one for Puma, we've got one for Nike, we've got one for Adidas. So each individual order is represented by a different advertiser. If we were to go into the Nike order, for example, you will see that within each order, we can have numerous different line items. And just as I spoke about earlier, we've got one for spring here, one for Christmas, and one for summer. So these are an example of different sort of detail that you can put within your order so that you achieve your desired result. Okay, so we're going to go back to the deck now. We're going to click present. So now that we've covered some of the basic ideas behind trafficking in that order, line item and creative, and of course I suppose it's good to mention at this time then within each individual line item you will assign a creative, which we'll speak about and show you in a little bit more detail further on in this presentation. But what we've noticed is that for those publishers out there who have direct sales, we notice is that the inventory split is usually those publishers who have direct sales, it forms a very small portion of their overall inventory, but it's usually their premium placements and their premium, definitely their premium inventory. And what we've noticed over the course of time dealing with many, many different partners and different publishers is that typically direct sales forms about 20% of the inventory, but makes about 80% of the revenue. And on the other hand, Your indirect, also sometimes known as backfill or sometimes known as remnant, often constitutes the vast remainder. So oftentimes 80% of your inventory and 20% of your revenue. So today what we're going to try to show you is some way to bridge the gap between the two and using Google Ad Manager's intuitive features in order to optimize the setup for both. Okay, and in order to achieve this, Google Ad Manager, formerly known as DoubleClick for Publishers or DFP, uses a system of ranking known as line item types, which are placed into priorities. So we've got two different types of priorities in general, those which are guaranteed and those which are not. Those which are guaranteed, these will always serve. And these are so long as that you have the applicable amount of inventory available to them. So these are the highest priority and they come in two forms, a sponsorship and a standard line item. Now a sponsorship line item is a percentage driven goal. So you can allot 50%, 60%, or 100% of your overall revenue, whatever you so choose, to a particular line item. Standard, on the other hand, is an impression-based goal. So that could come in the form of 100,000, 200,000, 1 million, etc. So these are two guaranteed line item types. On the other hand, in the non-guaranteed area, we've got network and bulk. Now, these are very similar to sponsorship and standard in that network is percentage driven and bulk is impression based driven. But the big difference here and the key difference is they're non-guaranteed. So even though they have percentage based and impression based goals, they do not have to meet these requirements, even if the inventory is available. So it's for this reason that these fall into the non-guaranteed space. Price priority, on the other hand, is used to fill a potentially infinite amount of impressions for the highest possible value. And for this reason, we would maintain that the best practice is to use price priority for all your third-party indirect setup, which Clément will be speaking to you about in more detail very shortly. Lowest of all, I should mention that network, price priority, and bulk all are at the same level. So they're lower than guaranteed campaigns, but they're the same level as each other, and they're the same priority in the ranking system as each other. The lowest of all on the ranking system is our house ads. These are used to cross-promote your other sites and apps and are used to show when you don't have any other ads to show in its place. So these are the lowest of all on the priority scale. Okay, and finally, a quick word on creatives. There's numerous different creative types. We've got creatives that are stored locally within your computer. We've got HTML5 creatives. We've got third-party creatives, which are typically applied in when working with third parties. We've got a DoubleClick a creative. This is also known as an internal redirect. This is where the creative is retrieved internally within the DoubleClick ecosystem from our buy side. DoubleClick Bid Manager and DCM, DoubleClick Campaign Manager. And of course, we've got a host of other creatives like custom creatives that are all available to you within the Google Ad Manager user interface. Okay, so just so you know, there are various different formats in which creatives can come. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with AdSense, for example, are familiar with the text and image types of formats, but we also support via Google Ad Manager video and native formats. So without further ado, I shall pass you over to Clément.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to first apologize in advance. I will try to say Google Ad Manager. I've been working with DFP for the last 3 years, using the DFP name for every day for the past 3 years. So this rebranding is a bit hard on me, but it's fine. So this part on yield management, I think, okay, will mostly be relevant for anyone who wants to maximize their revenue, which I'm hoping is all of you, and specifically for anyone who is working today with AdSense, but also with a third-party ad network. I will be using the example of Criteo today, but it could be any other type of a network. And we will focus on the basics because that's 90% of what you need to know in order for it to work properly. So, as discussed by Killian, there are several types of line item which are either guaranteed or non-guaranteed. Most are complex. For the sake of time and the sake of comprehension, we will focus today on price parity because, as Killian said, this is what we use as best practice. If you have a third-party network, Criteo as an example, just put them in price parity and we'll explain to you how this will help you make more money. Basically, what we're talking about is what we call dynamic allocation. Dynamic allocation seems extremely complex when you look at this like this, but dynamic allocation is just the fact that AdSense will communicate its live CPM into Google Ad Manager, not DFP. And for each query that comes in, Google Ad Manager will check if AdSense can do better or worse than a value that you have input in DFP or Google Ad Manager. That value, which is called either average CPM or rate or value CPM, is what's difficult to calculate, but we will show you how to do it easily. As you can see, AdSense touches all of the types. Today we're going to focus on price parity, but it works with some difference. It works kind of the same way for all of the types. So let me give you a few small examples of how dynamic allocation works. So in this example, I've got a price parity line item with a value CPM of 275. So the value CPM is the value you have input in DFP. In that case, it's the average value of what the network that's behind that price parity line item usually gives you. So that means that when you send that network 1,000 impressions, 1,000 queries, it will give you 2.75 euros. You have an AdSense line item. The query comes in. Google Ad Manager will reach out to AdSense and say, hey, what's the CPM you can do for this one query? AdSense says 4 euros. And then Google Ad Manager will then pit that 4 euro against the 2.75. And as you will be able to see, AdSense shows up on your website. So we have optimized for price, we have to optimize for you to make the most money based on the value you gave us as the average CPM for, or value CPM or rates for the price parity line item. It also works the other way. So let's say I still have a price parity line item at 275, but this time the query comes in and AdSense can only do 2 euros. What's going to happen? Obviously, the price parity line item is going to deliver and you will have an ad coming from your third-party ad network. So we're going to very rapidly cover this because it's more of we're going to do a live demo. This is more of when you get the deck afterwards so that you understand everything. Just as Killian said, put all of your third-party networks in price parity. And you will have, once you have those line items, and we're going to show you how to create those line items, but once you have those line items created, you're going to have to create one and just one AdSense line item that's going to cover all of your inventory that you want AdSense to actually show up on. And yeah, so we're just going to...
Absolutely, yeah. Clement, I had a quick question though. So you mentioned about dynamic allocation being a method for driving greater value by putting AdSense in competition with a third party, for example, Criteo that we're using in this case. My question is, what happens if I'm not working with a third party? How does dynamic allocation? What do I need to do? Do I need to go into this level of detail?
So this is mainly for the people who actually already work with Criteo. Okay. Should you want to work with a third-party network, you can always start a relationship with them. But right now, if you're just working with AdSense, just create an AdSense line item, and Google Ad Manager will keep on showing AdSense ad.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Before we get into the actual live demo, I just want to explain one of the very important point in order for you to be able to calculate the right average CPM or value CPM. We're gonna, in this example, we're going to create several line items for Criteo. The line items we're going to create are going to be based on size. So in the example we imagine for this live sessions, we have a website with 3 different types of ads. We have a 728 by 90, we have a 300 by 250, and we have a 120 by 600. If I want Criteo and AdSense to compete on all of those ad placements, I will have to create 3 different Criteo line item with 3 different tags. But in order to be able to understand how much money each size or how much money each line item is going to bring me, which will allow me to calculate the value CPM, which I'll give you the formula afterwards. You will need to match what's happening in Google Ad Manager with what's happening in the third party, meaning that for each line item in Google Ad Manager or DFP, you will need to have one specific tag in your third party ad network. This will allow you to compare apple to apple and then be able to calculate the right CPM and optimize revenue to the best of your ability. So I think now it's time to go into the account. So we'll first start by showing you how to create an AdSense line item. So if you go to delivery, new order, order, then new order. The name of the order should be AdSense or Google, because you will only create one order. The advertiser is Google. And then we just scroll down to new line item. This should be an AdSense run of network. Run of network means it sounds a bit scary, but it just means that it's you're only going to create one AdSense line item. It's going to cover all of your inventory. Don't worry, we'll show you how to exclude what you don't want to show up in there. So inventory size should be standard, and then you just need to list all of the sizes that you have on your website where you want AdSense to show up. So in that case, Killian is adding what we talked about, which is 300 by 250 and a 120 by 600. Okay, so in terms of types, you will need to choose the AdSense type. Make sure that the start time is immediately and that the end time is unlimited, unless you specifically want to limit the AdSense item, but there shouldn't be any reason for most people. You do not need technically to adjust delivery. Again, should you want to, you can, but we don't advise you to do it for the AdSense item. Then below this, there's a targeting. So that's just saying how is this line item going to target your inventory. In this case, right now, we are in run of network. But let's say you want to exclude one ad unit because maybe it's not policy compliant. You just need to click on that unit here in inventory, and then instead of clicking on include, just click on the small arrow on the right and click on exclude. So in that case, we have created a line item that is run of network, so that covers 100% of our website, but we've excluded the ad unit sports test. Once you've chosen what you wanted, just click on save and upload creatives. We are apparently missing something. If you scroll up, what did we miss? Because already when we prepared this this hangout, we created already the order, but it's fine. You should have the same issue. Upload creatives. So here we go. So when you upload creative, by default, it says select dynamic allocation ad unit by name, which is what it should be. If you click on the box right underneath this, Google Ad Manager or DFP will pull the ad units that are in your AdSense account that match the sizes that you've listed in the line item. So in our case, we have 4 ad units that match because we have 2 ad units for 720 by 90 and 1 ad unit for the MPU, so 300 by 250, and one ad unit for the skyscraper. I'm talking about AdSense ad unit here, 120 by 600. So let's say we want to use leaderboard test for our 720 by 90. It just populates automatically. I just click on save. We're still missing 2 creatives, but we've created the first one. If you go back to the order to the line item, so you will see that it will say that we're missing 2 creatives. If you scroll up, all the way up, see, you can see we're missing 2 creatives. So we'll just add another one for the 120 by 600. Let's see. We click on new creative. And it's just pulling the skyscraper because we told DFP that we just want the 120 by 600. Click on save. And we need to do it one last time for the 300 by 250. And then we'll be able to actually start delivering once we approve the order. Here you go. Perfect. So now, and once you click on approve, as soon as you'll get some queries coming from your website, there will be DFP or Google Ad Manager will broadcast some AdSense ads. But what we wanted, what the example was, is we want Criteo to compete against AdSense. So what we're going to do now is create 2 Criteo line items. Technically, we should create 3, but for the sake of time, we'll just create 2. So we're going to create one new order, which is going to be called Criteo. So go back to order, then new order. You might want to call it test because we created one yesterday. So test, whatever. Like yeah, that's good. Then the name of the trafficker is whoever is creating this. The advertiser should be Criteo, or the name of your third-party network. So the name of the line item is going to be Criteo, and then in our case, it's size. So let's create one for the 720 by 90. If you're doing several line items based on other targeting, let's say country, it could be Criteo France, it could be Criteo Germany. It just depends on how you're segmenting your inventory, but the easiest and what 99.9% of the publishers do is use size as a way to differentiate different types of line items. So inventory size is obviously 720 by 90. In that case, I should scroll down a little bit. The type should be price parity, as discussed earlier. So this is where it becomes a bit tricky. Just start time should be immediately, and end time should be unlimited. Unless you want it to start later for X reasons. The other thing you need to remember is that the limit should be at none, because by default it's at lifetime limit of 0, so it will not deliver. Whereas if there is no limit to the line item, it will start delivering right away. The rates are, as we said, value CPM or average CPM is where basically all of yield management is. In that case, and I'll explain why later, but we're going to put 50 cents because Criteo on average gives us, and that's for a fake account, that's fake numbers, but on average Criteo gives us 50 cents for 728 by 90s when they broadcast them. And then I will choose all the audience I wanted to choose if that's what I want to do, or if I want Criteo to show up everywhere on my website for all the 728 by 90, I can just leave it as run of network, like I did with AdSense. And then I'm going to click on save and upload creatives. click on third party, because it is a third party creative, which is just a fancy name to say put a Criteo tag. So if you click on third party, yeah, so this is just where you would put the Criteo tag, which you have in your Criteo UI. You just drop that tag here, give it a name, so you can call it Criteo tag 720 by 90, and then you can just save it. Obviously, we do not have a Criteo account or any third-party account, so we can't save it for you, can show you, but it would just, if you save it, it will work. Once this is done, so now what we have now at this stage is AdSense is delivering on everywhere on my website, and then Criteo is competing against AdSense only on 728 by 90s. So every time there is a query that comes in for 728 by 90, DFP or Google Tag Ad Manager is going to check if AdSense can do better than the value we put, which was 50 cents, which is going to create a second line item for, let's say, 300 by 250. So in the same order, in the same Criteo order, I'm going to click on new line item. I'm going to call it the same, using the same type of name. So in our case, Criteo test, then the size of 300 by 250. I'm going to put the right size, so 300 by 250. Exactly the same setup. So price priority, start time should be immediately, end time should be unlimited, none to limit. And then in that case, we've checked our Criteo account, and turns out that Criteo pays a bit more for the 300 by 250, and it's 60 cents. So let's put 60. So what that means is that Google Ad Manager is going to check when there is a query coming in for 300 by 250. It's going to check if AdSense can do not better than 50, but better than 60. Don't worry, we'll explain how to calculate that value. Again, leave it as run-of network if you need it to be as run-of network, or target it to somewhere else, to something different. You can just upload creatives. Yes, save and upload creatives. Exactly the same thing we just did 5 minutes ago, third-party creatives. And now you will be able to put your second Criteo tag for your 300 by 250. And then once that's done, you save, and you have Criteo and AdSense competing on all the 300 by 250 in your website.
Clement, I have a question. So we don't have a Criteo tag at the moment.
No.
But where would we get the Criteo tag?
From the Criteo UI. So you need to go inside your Criteo account, and then the place where you found the tag that you put on your website if you're working with Criteo today, you would go in your third-party network UI and actually just take the tag and then put it in Google Ad Manager. And
this is the tag that you were referring to when you were talking about the reporting that we'll be talking about in a few moments.
Yes, exactly. So as you see, we have we've created 2 different line items for Criteo for 2 different sizes, and you will need 2 different tags in that case Criteo, but in your third-party network, so that we can separate the 2 in the reporting.
Okay, so 2 line items in DFP or in Google Ad Manager, and two line items within Criteo.
Exactly.
Okay.
Two tags in within.
Two tags for reporting.
Yeah.
And then a second question I had. You mentioned a lot about segmenting your imagery.
Yeah.
So you mentioned potentially, well, in this case, we segmented it by different sizes. Yeah. We just used 300 by 250 and a 728 by 90. We may also could have used, if we had time, 120 by 600. And you mentioned country, and I think you mentioned also you could segment by device, whether it's desktop or mobile. Why typically, can you explain a little bit more detail? Why is that particularly relevant from a yield management point of view to making money?
So on the AdSense side, there is no difference because we have what we call live CPM. But on the Criteo side, DFP or Google Ad Manager does not know what the average value of Criteo is. Mm-hmm. So it relies on the value you are going to put, you as the publisher are going to put in there. this value can be extremely different between, let's say you're a Spanish publisher and you also have a lot of readers of your news website in South America. The CPMs are going to be completely different between Spain and, let's say, Argentina. So what you want to do in that case is separate both countries, even though they might be the same, they may use the same size on your website and so on. Separate the two countries so that you can have a competition that's harder to beat in Spain for AdSense and easier, or rather fairer in Argentina, because AdSense will also have lower CPMs in Argentina. So that the two line items will represent reality even more than just one global line item.
Okay, so suppose it depends on the granularity of your traffic.
Exactly,
and that's how you would reflect it within the granularity of the line item. So potentially you could have an intersection between geography. So you use the example of Spain and Argentina. We also use the example of sizes. So you could have a leaderboard, which is Spanish, and a leaderboard, which is Argentinian, different prices for each. So you could go into quite a bit of granularity.
Yeah, exactly. You could just target people from Paris for using a cell phone, an iPhone, and like you can go as deep as you want. But the idea is to optimize for revenue and also not waste all of your time. So your setup, it's really hard, if not impossible, to have a perfect setup. So what you want to do is optimize as much as possible with as little as effort as possible. Why do I say this? Is because, as you probably all know, CPMs in December are completely different than CPM in July. So what that means is that the value CPM rate, or average CPM that we talked about, will need to be kept updated. So once every month, you will need to go inside DFP or Google Ad Manager and actually change those values. But it's going to be easy because I'm going to give you the formula. So the formula to change those values, to calculate those values, so the value CPM of line item 1, so in our case, it was, if I'm not mistaken, Criteo test 728 by 90, is just the revenue that the tag in Criteo gave me. So let's say that Criteo gave me 1,000 euros over the past 30 days, and then divided by the number of ad server impressions. We're going to show you how to pull that report in DFP. So ad server impressions coming from that one line item. Obviously, the time frame needs to be the same. So what's a good way to do this is looking at the last month. So in our reporting, we'll do the month of June. But so on the first or second of every month, what you can do is go look back at the last month. So if you're in May, just look at April and so on, so that the time frame are the same in Criteo and in DFP or Google Ad Manager. You divide the revenue by the ad server impression. You multiply it by 1,000 just so that it's a CPM and not the value of one impression. And that will give you the value CPM, because that's the actual money you will get from Criteo for the 728 by 90 in our example, every time DFP sends a query to Criteo, or 1,000 queries rather, because we're talking CPMs. All right. So we're just gonna, before we move on to questions, we're just gonna show you how to do pull a report in DFP on how to.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you go to reports,
just for confirmation, the reason why it shows the error is because we don't have a Criteo tag here for the creative. So when you try to save without a code snippet, it will always show error. Okay. Definitely. So then on to reporting, which is contained here.
Yeah. And then queries.
It's a test account, so we don't have any live queries going through it at the moment.
Yes, but we will show you how to create it, and there will be no data to display, but there will be a nuance. So we clicked on new query. You want the report to be historical. You don't want to change the time zone. The date range is super important. So you want to click on edit and make sure that it's the same date range that what your gonna look at in Criteo. So in our case, let's do the month of June. So we're gonna click on fixed. Start date is the 1st of June. End date is going to be the 30th of June. Apply. Filter, so I'm going to apply a filter for the line item I want to see. So if you choose line item, here you go. And then just start typing the name of that one line item. So in our case, it's Criteo test 728 by 90. I think it's Criteo 720 by 90. We created several line items yesterday to test our account, but it won't be the case for you. Then the dimension should be line item. In case you want to pull a report with several line items, that way you have you can just pull one report. But in our case, we're just going to filter for one. And then you want to look at ad server impressions. Okay. And then click on run. So in our case, it's not going to work, but because it's an empty account. But then if you have had your DFP account running for just one day, you will see some data here. So this is how you calculate once you are up and running with DFP. This is how you calculate the value. You're about to ask me how to calculate before you have DFP up and running.
Yes.
Aren't you?
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
So it's harder to calculate the right CPM at the very beginning before you launch DFP. So here's what I would do. I would look at how many queries I got into my third-party ad network. So maybe Criteo, maybe Rubicon, whatever. I would look at the revenue, and I would just divide the queries within that. Divide the revenue and by the number of queries within that ad network. It's not perfect for a lot of reasons that include latency, loss of impression, and so on. So it's better if afterwards you use DFP data. But for a first shot, it's better than and it's going to be more precise than anything else you can do. Another way to calculate it would be to do your revenue. Yes, your revenue multiplied, your CPM, multiplied by your coverage or your fill rate. So let's say Criteo gives me €2 CPM with a 50% coverage. The value I would put in DFP or Google Ad Manager would be €1 because €2 multiplied by 50% is €1. Okay, so I think
of course then that would be by a given position or whatever way you're segmenting.
Yeah, so sorry again, we're talking about the same segmentation than the line items and tags you want to put.
Exactly. So 728 by 90,
exactly.
Or 300 by 250, as was the case in this position.
Exactly.
Or in this example. And and as you said as well, Clement, I think this is probably only a starting point. If you're already working with a third party like Criteo or someone like that, you start with this, but then after 30 days or after 1 week or 2 weeks, you already have good data. You can pull the report as I showed. And once you do that, then you have the most effective way to calculate the rate.
Easiest and most precise.
Okay. So we go back here.
Yeah. So
okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
We're going to switch to questions now. If you've asked your question on g.co/AdSense question, we will now see them. Let's see what we have.
Okay. Then here.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's have a look.
Okay.
So the one here from Alex, I believe from Germany, he asked. He has a lot of traffic from mobile users, and he's asked whether he should segment his inventory by different device type and what the rates that they typically see versus desktop and mobile are.
So again, if you have if you see a big difference between different platform types, so maybe mobile, desktop, or tablets, you should create several line items. If you see that the average CPMs are about the same, you shouldn't, basically. I'm not going to give you a number as to what the difference between mobile and desktop is, because I have a bit of an idea on the French market, but I'm not specialized outside of this French market. And even on the French market, every website is different. So you will have websites that do much better on mobile than they do on desktop in terms of CPMs, in terms of money, and so on. And you will have a lot of websites that are going the other way, which are making more money on desktop.
Okay. So yeah, I think from what I've seen on a global perspective within EMEA is that typically desktop on average seems to be a higher paying device than mobile. But as you said,
it really depends
on what you see within your third party. And if that's the case, then potentially it's worth going about and creating a segmentation level for that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that was the main question that we'd seen repeated over time. So thank you very much for your patience, and thank you very much for your attention. So we hope you found it useful, and thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.